My son told me not to come to Thanksgiving because I'd make the clients feel awkward. So I drove home alone and ate reheated soup in the dark. But at 8:47 that evening, my daughter-in-law called. Her voice was shaking. "What did you just do?" And then my son grabbed the phone and said, "You've destroyed everything we built." I hadn't destroyed anything. I just finally told the truth about who built it. Quick question before we go any further. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments below. Because what happened to me that night, sitting alone at my kitchen table while my son's voice cracked on the other end of the line, it's something I think a lot of people need to hear. My name is Gerald Marsh. I'm 63 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom house in Traverse City, Michigan, about 4 minutes from Lake Michigan if you know the back roads. I built that house myself in 1994, poured the foundation, framed every wall, put in the windows with my own hands while my wife stood in the driveway handing me tools and telling me I'd measured wrong. She was almost never right about that. Almost. To understand what happened at Thanksgiving, you need to go back. You need to go back about 6 years, to when my wife was still alive and my family still felt like a family. Her name was Donna. She taught 4th grade for 31 years at Garfield Elementary and spent her summers gardening and feeding every stray animal within a half-mile radius of our house. She was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday, who kept a running list of people who were going through hard times so she could drop off casseroles. When she got sick, the line of people waiting to return the favor stretched out the front door of the hospital and down the hallway. She died of a pulmonary embolism on a Wednesday in April, 3 days after our anniversary. She was 61. I wasn't ready. I don't think you can ever be ready. My son stepped up in those first weeks. He drove up from Grand Rapids, stayed with me, made sure I ate. My daughter called every single day from Portland. For a while, grief made us close the way it sometimes does, pulling people together around the empty space where someone used to be. But grief doesn't hold forever. I had spent 34 years building Marsh Custom Builders from a one-truck operation out of my garage into one of the most respected residential construction companies in northern Michigan. 83 homes built, 41 renovations, a reputation for doing the work right, even when right cost more time and money than easy. My son had grown up watching me work, had started coming to job sites at 14, had joined the business full-time after college. For a while, we were good together. He handled sales and client relationships. I handled design and construction. It worked because we trusted each other. After Donna died, things shifted. Slowly at first, he started bringing in a business consultant from Grand Rapids. Started talking about scalability and market positioning and brand modernization. He suggested my name come off the logo. Not removed, he said, repositioned. He wanted the company to feel younger, more dynamic, less tied to one person. I understood the business logic, even if it stung. I let it go. I let a lot of things go that year because I was still waking up every morning reaching for a person who wasn't there anymore. What I didn't let go was my design portfolio. Over 34 years, I had developed what I called a modular foundation system, a proprietary method for building on the uneven glacial terrain that's common in this part of Michigan. It cut construction time by roughly 20% and eliminated the settling problems that plagued most contractors in the region. I had refined it over 2 decades, documented it obsessively, and in March of 2021, on the advice of an attorney named Helen Park in Traverse City, I filed a formal trade secret registration and began the process of pursuing a design patent. Helen had looked over everything and said, quietly but firmly, "Gerald, file this in your name. Not the company's. Yours." I trusted her. I filed. I didn't tell my son. Not because I was hiding it. Because it didn't feel urgent. The company was mine. The method was mine. I didn't think I needed to explain that to my own child. That was the first mistake I made. Not filing. Not telling. By summer of 2022, I started noticing things. Strategy meetings scheduled without me. Material supplier calls going to my son instead of me. A new office manager who clearly hadn't been told I was the one who'd built the business. When I asked about it, my son said he was just streamlining. "Dad, you've done the heavy lifting for 30 years. Let us take some of that off your plate." He said it kindly. He always said things kindly. My daughter called me in August from Portland. She was between her son's soccer games and I could hear the field noise in the background. "How are things at work, really?" she asked. I told her they were fine. She went quiet for a second. Okay, she said. I don't know. Something feels off. I told her she was reading too much into things. I believed that. My granddaughter was 6 that summer. My son's daughter. She had Donna's nose and my stubborn streak, and she thought the best part of visiting Grandpa's house was that I let her help me measure things. She'd stand beside me with the tape measure, completely serious, announcing numbers with enormous confidence. Sometimes she was right. I never told her when she wasn't. I'd just nod and say, "Good, that's exactly right." She drew me a picture that August, a house with a blue door and a man standing out front with a tool belt. She labeled it, in careful letters, "Grandpa's house that Grandpa built." I put it on my refrigerator. It's still there. September 2022. I got a call from a man named Roger Calloway, residential developer out of Detroit, expanding into northern Michigan. He'd heard about our foundation method through an architect he worked with. "We're looking at licensing this system for a 60-unit development in Charlevoix," he said. "Whoever holds the patent, we need to talk to them." I told him I did. We set a meeting. My son found out about the meeting before it happened. I don't know how. He called me that evening, voice smooth and careful. "Dad, the Callaway Group inquiry came through the company email. I think we should handle that together. Licensing conversations need to go through legal." I told him I had my own legal counsel. Pause. "Dad, the foundation system was developed under Marsh Custom Builders. The IP belongs to the company." I felt something go cold in my chest. "No," I said. "It doesn't." Long silence. "Let's talk about this in person." We met at his office in Grand Rapids 2 days later. His wife was there, which surprised me. She managed the business finances and was organized and sharp, and had always been perfectly pleasant to me at family gatherings. That day she had a folder in front of her and didn't make eye contact when I walked in. My son sat at the head of the table. "We want to handle this carefully," he said. "We're not trying to make this adversarial, but anything developed using company time and company resources is a company asset." I told him the method had been developed on my own time, in my own home, documented in my personal files, and that I had the timestamps to prove it. His wife slid a document across the table. "This is the consulting agreement you signed in 2019 when we restructured. Section 4 covers intellectual property." I took the document, drove home, called Helen. She read the agreement that night, called me the next morning. "The language in Section 4 is broad, but your patent filing predates the restructuring by about 18 months, and your documentation trail is clean. They'd have a hard time making this stick." She paused. "But Gerald, they're going to try." I drove to Traverse City to see her in person. We spent 3 hours going through everything: patent filings, time-stamped design documents, email chains where I'd been the one advising the Callaway Group contact before my son even knew who Roger Callaway was. Helen put her pen down at the end and looked at me. "You're protected, but I want you to understand something. Once you assert this, it becomes a legal matter. It won't stay inside the family." I already knew that. What I didn't know was how much further outside the family it would eventually go. I went home and spent a week doing nothing. I worked on a small deck renovation I'd picked up independently. I cooked. I watched the lake. I looked at Donna's photo on the mantel and tried to figure out what she would have said. She would have said, "Gerald Marsh, stop avoiding this." She was almost always right about that. October came. My son called about Thanksgiving. "We're hosting this year," he said. "Big group. Some of the new investors, plus a couple of the architect partners we've been working with. Celeste's parents are flying in." He sounded distracted. "We want to keep things professional since it's partly a business dinner. Maybe this year you'd be more comfortable doing your own thing?" He said it gently. He always said things gently. I told him I understood. He said we'd do something together in December, just family. He hung up before I could respond. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call. It was the house I had built. Donna's reading chair was still in the corner of the living room with a library book on the side table that she'd been 3/4 through when she died. I hadn't moved it. Couldn't. Her garden boots were still by the back door. I called my daughter that night. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been expecting it. I told her about Thanksgiving. She went quiet. Then she said, "Dad, I'm coming." I told her she didn't need to do that. She said, I didn't ask if I needed to. I'm coming. She arrived 2 days before Thanksgiving with her husband and my grandson, who was 9 and had recently decided his only interests were dinosaurs and Minecraft, in that order. We cooked together, my daughter and I. She made Donna's sweet potato casserole from the actual recipe card, Donna's handwriting on a yellowed index card that we'd had to handle carefully. My grandson sat at the kitchen table building something elaborate out of toothpicks and told us it was a triceratops skeleton but modern. We told him it was excellent. It was. Thanksgiving morning, I got a call from Roger Calloway. He'd met with my son's team the previous week without telling me. Your son presented the foundation system as a Marsh Custom Builders proprietary asset, he said. He's asking for a licensing fee structured through the company. Gerald, I want to make sure I'm talking to the right person here. I told him he was. I told him to hold the conversation. I called Helen immediately. By noon that day, Helen had sent a formal notice to my son's business attorney, asserting my ownership, requesting a cessation of any licensing discussions on my behalf. My son's attorney called Helen within an hour. The call was not friendly. My son didn't call me. His wife texted. 4 words. We need to talk. I didn't respond. My daughter read the text over my shoulder and didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, Dad, what are you going to do? I told her I was going to finish making the pie. Thanksgiving evening, I was washing dishes when my phone rang at 8:47. My son's wife. Her voice was tight and high. What did you just do? Roger Calloway's attorney called us. Our attorney called us. Gerald, do you understand what you've just done to us? My son took the phone. You sent a legal notice on Thanksgiving? His voice cracked. It was the most emotion I'd heard from him in 2 years. Dad, we are your family. How could you do this today of all days? I kept my voice level. You were having a business dinner, I said. This is business. He hung up. My daughter was standing in the doorway holding a dish towel. My grandson had fallen asleep on the couch behind her with a dinosaur encyclopedia open on his chest. Is it bad? She asked quietly. It's going to get worse before it gets better, I said. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. December was the difficult part. Helen sent notices. My son's attorney pushed back. The language got sharp in a way that legal language does when both sides know who's right and one side isn't ready to admit it. Roger Calloway quietly withdrew from negotiations with Marsh Custom Builders. He called me personally. I do business with people I trust, he said. Let me know when you're ready. My son stopped calling. My granddaughter did not. She called my cell phone on a Saturday morning, which surprised me because she was 7 and I hadn't known 7-year-olds could navigate phones independently. Grandpa, she said, I made you a house. She held the phone up to show me. Cardboard, colored pencil, a toothpick flag on the roof. It has a blue door, she said, very seriously, like your real house. I told her it was the best house I'd ever seen. She said, I wanted to give it to you, but Mom said not right now. Pause. Small voice. I don't understand why not right now. I told her sometimes grown-ups had disagreements that were hard to explain. She thought about that. Like when Marcus and I fight about the TV? I told her yes, exactly like that. She seemed satisfied with that answer. I was not, but I was grateful she was. January. Helen told me we had a strong case and that we should expect my son's team to keep pushing before they eventually settled. She was right about the pushing. My son's attorney filed a counter-argument citing the 2019 consulting agreement. Helen filed our response. My son sent me a long email in the middle of January. It was the first direct communication in 6 weeks. He was sorry for how the Thanksgiving call had gone. He was not sorry for his legal position. He wanted to find a way forward that worked for everyone. He used the phrase for the good of the family business 3 times in one paragraph. I didn't respond for 4 days. When I did, I kept it to 2 sentences. The business was built on my work. I'm happy to discuss the future when the past is acknowledged. My daughter called weekly. My grandson sent me a drawing of a triceratops that he said was for when you're sad. I taped it beside my granddaughter's cardboard house on the refrigerator. My daughter's husband, who is quiet and practical and one of the steadiest people I have ever met, called me separately one evening and said, Gerald, whatever you need, we're here. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. February. Helen got a call from a mediator my son's team had hired. They wanted to sit down. They're going to offer you a buyout, Helen told me. They'll say it's generous. It probably won't be. We met in a conference room in Grand Rapids in the middle of the month. My son sat across from me with his attorney. He looked thin. There were circles under his eyes I hadn't seen before. His wife wasn't there this time. His attorney outlined a proposal, a lump sum payment plus a quarterly royalty percentage in exchange for assigning the design patent to Marsh Custom Builders. I looked at the number. I looked at my son. I asked him directly, not the attorney, him. Did you know what you were doing when you brought the foundation system to Callaway as a company asset? He looked at the table, looked up. I thought it was, he said finally. Legally, I believed it was. I waited. He rubbed the back of his neck. And I wanted it to be, he added quietly, because the company needed it. His attorney looked uncomfortable. My son kept going. I needed it to work. The business has been struggling since we lost the Petoskey contract. I needed a win, and the Callaway deal felt like one. He stopped. I'm not saying that justifies it. I told him it didn't. His attorney started to interject. I told the attorney to give us a minute. When it was just the two of us, I said, I built that system because I was trying to solve problems no one else was solving. I built it at night, at my desk, the same desk I've had for 20 years. I wasn't trying to compete with you. I was just still working, because that's what I do. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. His voice was quiet. I know that, Dad. We didn't settle that day. We went back to our respective attorneys and negotiated for another 3 weeks. What we eventually agreed to was different from what they'd initially offered. He retained use of the foundation system for Marsh Custom Builders projects through a formal licensing arrangement at a rate that was fair and documented and legally binding. The design patent stayed in my name. The Callaway licensing deal went through me directly, with a referral arrangement to Marsh Custom Builders for implementation. It wasn't everything. It wasn't nothing. Helen said it was the best outcome given the circumstances. Roger Callaway shook my hand at the signing and said, now we can actually get to work. What I had to live with was harder to settle. The Thanksgiving exclusion, the meetings I hadn't been invited to, the 2 years of being gradually walked out of something I'd spent my life building. Legal agreements don't resolve those things. You just carry them differently over time. March, my son called. Not his attorney. Him. He asked if he could come to Traverse City. I said yes. He drove up on a Saturday and we sat at my kitchen table and drank coffee. He looked better than he had in February. Steadier. He talked for a while about the business, where it was, what he was trying to rebuild. Then he stopped talking about the business and said, I'm sorry I told you not to come to Thanksgiving. He said it like he'd been practicing it, which maybe he had. I told myself it was practical, that you'd be uncomfortable with the clients. But honestly, I was embarrassed. I asked him what he was embarrassed about. He thought about it for a while. That I needed you, he said. I'd spent 2 years trying to run this without leaning on you, and I still needed your methods, your work, your name in the industry, and I couldn't admit that. He set down his coffee cup. I should have just asked. I looked at my son for a long moment. He is 57 years my junior. He has my broad shoulders and Donna's ability to walk into a room and make people feel immediately at ease, which is a gift I have never had. He had done something that hurt me deeply and had also spent 6 months living with the consequences of it, which I had watched from a distance and which had clearly cost him. I didn't tell him it was fine. It wasn't fine. I didn't tell him I forgave him. Not yet. I told him the truth, which was that I appreciated him driving up and saying what he'd said, and that what came next would depend on what he did with it. He nodded like he understood. We ate lunch. He helped me hang a new shelf in the garage before he drove back. We didn't hug when he left. We shook hands. It was a start. April. My granddaughter's class did a project on family history. Her teacher assigned each student to interview someone from an older generation. My son called to ask if she could interview me over video call. I said yes immediately. She called on a Tuesday evening in her school uniform, notebook open, pencil ready, extremely official. Her first question was, how did you learn to build houses? I told her my father had taught me how to use a level when I was 9 years old, about the same age she was now. Her eyes went wide. 9? That's how old I am. I told her she could probably learn it too if she wanted. She looked at her notebook very seriously. "I'm going to write that down," she said. "Can Grandpa teach me?" I told her yes, whenever she wanted. She smiled, the smile that was so much like Donna's it physically hurt, but in the way things hurt when they're all so good. Summer came slowly the way Michigan summers do. My son started including me on project emails again. Informally at first, forwarding things with notes like "thought you might have input on this." Then more directly, I didn't step back into the business. That door had closed and I wasn't sure I wanted to open it again. But I consulted on 2 foundation issues that season because nobody else knew what I knew, and the work needed to be right. My granddaughter came to visit for a week in July with my son and his wife. We built a small birdhouse in the backyard. She held the level. Her numbers were almost always right. I told her every time. My daughter came up with her family the same week, and for the first time since Donna died, my house was full of people who belonged in it. We ate outside on the back porch. My grandson explained dinosaur migration patterns to anyone who would listen. My granddaughter drew a new picture, the house with the blue door, but this time with people standing in front of it. She labeled them. Everyone got a name. I was in the middle. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I had told my son about the patent filing the day I filed it. Not because it would have prevented everything, but because secrets, even protective ones, create the distance that other people fill with assumptions. I wish I had asked direct questions sooner instead of waiting until a legal notice was the only language left. I wish I had made it clearer, earlier, that being older doesn't mean being done, and that I was still there, still working, still had things to offer that weren't obsolete just because they were mine. But here is what I know now. Documentation is not distrust. Writing things down, filing things correctly, keeping records of your own work is not a betrayal of the people around you. It's the most honest thing you can do, because it means the truth exists somewhere outside of anyone's memory of it. Helen Park told me that the first day I walked into her office and I didn't fully believe her. I believe her now. Setting limits is not the same as giving up. I spent 2 years accepting less than I should have accepted because I didn't want to create conflict. What I actually created was the space for conflict to grow unchallenged. Saying something sooner would have been harder in the moment. It would have been so much less costly in the end. And the last thing, the people who see you clearly are not always the people you expect. My son had to lose something before he could see me. My daughter saw me the whole time. My granddaughter, who is 9 years old and holds a tape measure with the gravity of a professional, has never once looked at me like I'm past my usefulness. She looks at me like I'm the person who knows how things are built, which is, if I'm being honest, exactly what I am. If you're watching this and you know what it feels like to be quietly walked out of something you built, to be managed and redirected and gently sidelined by people who never intended to be cruel, hear me. Your work is yours. Your history is yours. Your name belongs on what you made. Don't wait until someone else is deciding what to do with it. Speak up, document, find your Helen. And if someone tells you that you'll make the clients feel awkward, ask yourself what they're actually worried about. I'm Gerald Marsh. I built 83 houses and I'm not done yet. Thank you for being here. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight to be seen by the people who were supposed to see you most? Have you stayed quiet when you should have spoken? Or spoken up and paid a price for it? Leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story reached you at the right moment, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more true stories about the things that cost us everything and what we learn when we're finally willing to pay.